There was a season in Asgard when the air grew heavy, not with rain, but with the suffocating weight of peace. Thor, the red-bearded son of Odin, found no joy in the clinking of mead horns or the soft songs of the skalds. His strength was a river dammed, a storm trapped in a bottle. He looked toward the eastern horizon, toward the jagged, frost-bitten peaks of Jotunheim, where the enemies of the gods whispered in the dark. He did not seek wisdom, nor did he seek to maintain the balance of the 9 realms. He sought the shudder of bone against iron. Calling for his servant, the swift-footed mortal Thialfi, Thor commanded his chariot to be ready. He moved in the gray hours before dawn, hopping to slip past the Allfather's gaze. Even the goats, Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder, seemed to sense their master's bloodlust, their hooves sparking against the stone of the Bifrost. But as they reached the shimmering boundary of Asgard, a shadow detached itself from the mist. Loki, the Sly One, stood there with a smile as sharp as a winter frost. "To Utgard," Loki asked, his voice a silken thread. "A place of ancient giants and deep sorcery. You will need more than a hammer, great Thor. You will need a witness to your glory, or someone to pick up the pieces." The transition into the land of the giants was not a crossing of borders, but a descent into a nightmare of scale. The trees grew so tall their tops were lost in the freezing clouds. The rocks were the size of fortresses. As night fell, a blizzard howled across the wastes, blinding the travelers. They stumbled upon a strange, 5-chambered cavern, its entrance wide and inviting. Exhausted, they huddled in a side passage and fell into a deep, heavy sleep. But the night provided no rest. A rhythmic thumping like the beating of a titan's heart shook the cavern walls. Dust fell from the ceiling and the goats bleated in terror. Thor gripped Mjolnir, his knuckles white, waiting for a foe to emerge from the dark. When the sun finally rose, the cavern dissolved. The gods stood not in a cave, but in the leather glove of a sleeping giant. The side passage where they had slept was merely the thumb. Standing before them was Skrymir. He was so vast that his belt buckle was level with the treetops. When he woke, his yawn sounded like a mountain collapsing. Thor, feeling small for the first time in an eternity, demanded the giant's name. Skrymir looked down, his eyes like frozen lakes. "I am Skrymir," he said simply, "and I see you have been playing in my clothing." As they journeyed together toward the fortress of Utgard, Skrymir offered to carry their food. He tied their bags into his own satchel with a knot of iron-hard leather and promptly fell asleep beneath a massive oak. Thor, ravenous and insulted by the giant's casual dismissal, attempted to open the bag. The knots wouldn't budge. Fury, hot and jagged, took hold of the thunder god. He raised Mjolnir, the weapon that had shattered the skulls of 1,000 trolls, and brought it down with a world-ending crack upon Skrymir's forehead. The giant stirred. "Did a leaf fall?" he muttered. Thor retreated, his heart hammering against his ribs. He waited until the giant snored again, then struck a second time, burying the hammer deep into the giant's crown. "An acorn," Skrymir groaned, turning over. Thor's pride was now a bleeding wound. He gathered every spark of divinity within him, leapt into the air, and struck a third time with such violence that the air itself screamed. The hammer struck the giant's temple with the force of a falling moon. Skrymir sat up and brushed his brow. "There must be birds in this tree," he sighed. "A twig has fallen on my face." Thor stood paralyzed. The hammer that never failed had failed. They reached the gates of Utgard, a citadel forged of ice and ancient stone. The king, Utgard Loki, sat upon a throne that seemed carved from a glacier. He looked at the travelers with a pity that was more insulting than any blow. "We do not host the weak here," the king declared. "If you wish to sit at our table, you must prove you are the masters of your craft." The humiliations began. Loki, the god of fire and wit, faced a giant named Logi in an eating contest. Loki ate with the speed of a starving wolf, leaving not a shred of meat on the bones. But Loki did not stop at the meat. He consumed the bones, the trough, and the very ground beneath it. Loki had lost. Thialfi, whose feet were swifter than the summer wind, raced a youth named Hugi. Thialfi ran until his lungs felt filled with molten lead, but Hugi finished the race before Thialfi had even reached the halfway mark. The mortal fell into the snow, gasping. His legendary speed made a mockery. Then came Thor. "I will drink your cellar dry," he roared. The king handed him a horn. "A true champion finishes this in one draft," he said. Thor drank. He drank until the world blurred, until his chest felt ready to burst. When he stopped, the liquid had barely moved. He drank a second time and a third, pouring his immortal will into the task, yet the horn remained nearly full. "Perhaps a simpler test," the king mocked. "Lift my gray cat from the floor." Thor, his rage now a cold, desperate thing, grabbed the beast. He heaved until his spine creaked, until the very foundations of the hall groaned. The cat merely arched its back, and Thor could only lift a single paw. "Enough," the king cried, his laughter shaking the rafters. "Wrestle my old nurse, Ellie. If you can move her, you may stay." An ancient, toothless woman hobbled forward. Thor gripped her, intending to end the farce, but she was like a pillar of iron. The harder he pushed, the stronger she became, until at last the god of thunder was forced to one knee. He sat in the shadows of the hall that night, silent and broken, watching the giants feast in a world he no longer understood. At dawn, the king escorted the shamed gods to the borders of his realm. The air grew thin, and the colors of the world began to bleed and shimmer. The king stopped and looked at Thor, his eyes no longer mocking, but filled with a terrifying reverence. "Now that you are outside my walls," the king whispered, "I will tell you the truth. You have not been defeated by giants, but by the fabric of the universe itself. I was Skrymir. I saw the fury in your eyes, and I knew your hammer would slay me. Every time you struck, I used my magic to pull a mountain between us. Look back, Thor." Thor turned. Where there had been flat plains, there were now 3 deep, square valleys carved into the bedrock. Thor had not hit a man. He had nearly sundered the earth. "Loki did not race a giant," the king continued. "He faced wildfire, which devours all in its path. Thialfi did not race a boy, he raced thought, and no mortal can outrun a mind's eye. And you, son of Odin, that horn was connected to the great ocean. You drank so deeply that the seas of Midgard have receded, creating the first tides. The cat you lifted, that was the Midgard serpent, the beast that binds the world. When you lifted its paw, you nearly pulled the serpent from the depths, an act that caused the stars to tremble. And the old woman, that was old age. There is no god, no giant, and no world that can withstand her. Yet you held your ground longer than any being in the history of time." Thor's shame evaporated, replaced by a rage so pure it threatened to ignite the air. He raised Mjolnir, determined to leave nothing of Utgard but ash and memories. He swung, but the hammer passed through empty mist. The fortress, the king, and the giants vanished like a dream upon waking. Thor, Loki, and Thialfi stood alone on a barren, silent plain. There was no city. There were no giants. There was only the wind and the 3 deep valleys in the distance as proof that it had happened at all. Thor looked at his hammer and then at the horizon. He had learned that strength is not merely in the arm, but in the understanding of the unseen forces that govern the world. Thank you for listening. The sagas of the North remind us that even the gods can be humbled by the illusions of the mind and the passage of time. If you enjoyed this story of Utgard, like and subscribe to our Hall of Legends. What myth should we uncover next? Is there a god or a monster you wish to see unmasked? Comment below and your choice may be the next saga. Until the next sun rises, farewell.